There is a kind of room that says nothing and somehow tells you everything. Walk into a Korean home, and the first thing you notice isn't what's there. It's what isn't. It is the absence itself that speaks first, before a single object ever gets the chance to explain itself. No scattered chargers. No half-finished projects staring back at you. No objects competing for your attention, each one whispering, "Notice me, use me, worry about me." Just space. Deliberate, unclaimed, breathing space. It's tempting to call this style minimalism as decoration, a trend borrowed from a magazine. But something about the stillness feels older than that, more disciplined than that. This isn't a room designed to look calm. It's a room built to be calm, the way a habit is built, one quiet decision at a time. And somewhere in that stillness, a question starts to form, uninvited. What would your own home tell a stranger, if it could speak? What is sitting in your space right now, not because you chose it, but because you simply never removed it? Most people don't think of their living room as an opponent, but it is, quietly, constantly, in ways they've stopped noticing. That charger tangled by the outlet isn't just a charger. It's an unfinished decision, sitting there, waiting to be dealt with. The stack of unopened mail on the counter isn't paperwork. It's a small, nagging voice that never fully goes quiet. The shelf crowded with things once loved and now merely kept. The screen left glowing in the corner of a room nobody's watching. The decoration that exists simply because the wall looked fair. None of it feels urgent. That's exactly the problem. Each object is small enough to ignore and persistent enough to never disappear, and together they form a kind of static, a low hum of unfinished business running quietly beneath everything you try to focus on. This is what a Korean home refuses to hold. Not because Korean people own less by accident, but because they seem to understand something the rest of us were never taught. A space that asks for nothing is a space that gives your mind somewhere to actually rest. A space that constantly demands small decisions is a mind that never fully arrives anywhere. And if that's true, the real question isn't what's cluttering your room. It's what's been quietly cluttering you. Most of us were raised to believe discipline is something you summon from inside yourself, a force of will you either have on a given day or don't. Push harder. Want it more. Rely on yourself. But that belief quietly assumes something the Korean approach seems to reject entirely, that self-control should be a constant, exhausting performance. Look closer at the objects removed from a Korean home, the extra furniture never bought, the decorative clutter never displayed, the just-in-case items never kept, and a different philosophy starts to emerge. This isn't emptiness for its own sake. It's engineering, a recognition that willpower is finite and that the environment either spends it for you or protects it for you. There's a quiet cultural thread running underneath this, something close to what's known as jong, an inherited sense of emotional restraint, of not needing excess to feel whole. Tidiness here isn't a chore performed under pressure. It's closer to inheritance, passed down the way posture or table manners might be passed down, absorbed rather than taught. And somewhere in that difference sits an uncomfortable truth. The West tends to treat discipline as a personal failure when it collapses. Korean domestic culture seems to treat discipline as a design problem, something you solve once, in the space itself, so you never have to fight the same battle twice. Which raises a quieter, more personal question. If discipline isn't about trying harder, but about needing to try less, then what exactly has your own environment been quietly asking of you, every single day, without you ever noticing? Here's the thing nobody wants to admit out loud. Most of what gets called clutter was never really clutter at all. It was an escape route, quietly built into the architecture of a room. The phone left face up on the coffee table isn't just a phone. It's an exit, always within reach, always ready to pull you out of a difficult feeling before you've even finished having it. The snacks left visible on the counter aren't really about hunger. They're a small, easy reward sitting there in case boredom or stress ever gets too heavy to sit with. The remote within arm's reach, the tablet charging on the nightstand, the extra screen glowing somewhere in the background, none of it is accidental. It's positioned, whether consciously or not, as a way out of discomfort you never learned how to simply feel. This is the part that stings a little. Because if that's true, then every object left in easy reach is a quiet admission, a signal of which feelings you've never quite trusted yourself to sit through without reaching for something else. A Korean home that removes these things isn't practicing restriction. It isn't asking anyone to grit their teeth and resist temptation through sheer force. It's simply refusing to let temptation exist in the first place, refusing to let the room offer an exit before the mind has even asked for one. There's no willpower required when the escape route was never built. And that reframes the entire question. Maybe the goal was never to become someone with more self-control. Maybe it was always to become someone who no longer needs it because the space around them stopped offering easy ways out. Which means the emptiness in that particular room was never really about having less to look at, but about having less to quietly run from each day. There's a different kind of clutter, one that has nothing to do with distraction at all. It sits quieter than the rest, tucked in drawers and closets, easy to forget, and somehow impossible to throw away. The gift someone gave with love that never once got used. The purchase made in a moment of guilt, meant to fix a feeling it never actually touched. The old photograph, the outgrown clothing, the small reminder of a version of yourself you're not entirely sure you've left behind. These aren't decisions people forgot to make. They're decisions people have been quietly avoiding because letting go of the object can feel, unfairly, like letting go of the memory itself. This is where the Korean approach stops being about tidiness and becomes something closer to emotional honesty. Removing these things isn't organizing a shelf. It's finally metabolizing a feeling that's been left sitting there, half-processed for years. And something shifts the moment it happens. The mind that used to react to everything, every object, every unresolved reminder, every small emotional debt left unpaid, begins instead to feel like it's already decided what it will allow to stay close. Not out of coldness, out of care. Imagine for a moment what that kind of space would actually feel like to live inside. Nothing pulling at you from the corners of a room. Nothing quietly asking to be dealt with later. Just space that holds only what you've chosen, and a mind, finally, doing the same. That's not minimalism. That's what it feels like to trust yourself again. It is the sound of a home no longer negotiating, a mind that has finally stopped bracing. And in that stillness, something softer begins to settle, the kind of quiet that doesn't ask anything of you at all. Picture that same room again, the one from the very beginning. Still, quiet. Nothing quietly competing for your attention, nothing quietly asking to be dealt with. Only now, it doesn't feel empty. It feels earned, because that was never the point. Not fewer possessions. Not a cleaner shelf. The point was a mind that had finally stopped negotiating with its own environment, a life that no longer needed willpower to feel calm, because calm had already been built into the space itself. Discipline was never something you had to force every morning through sheer effort. It was something you could design once, quietly, and then simply live inside of. Somewhere between the first cluttered counter and this final stillness, something in you may have already started making a list of its own. Not of things to buy, of things to finally let go. So look around, just for a moment. Not at the walls or the shelves or the surfaces. Look at what your space has been quietly asking you to release, for longer than you've probably been willing to admit. It might not be an object at all. It might simply be the version of you that kept it.